Story 1. Being betrayed by the one you trusted completely and by those you thought would be in your life forever. Story 2. I had a knee replacement on May 24th. Exactly 6 months later, I broke my femur on the same leg, around 3 inches above the knee. I slipped and proceeded to scream down the street. I had only just moved in, so I know my neighbors really well now. The operation to fix rods and screws onto my artificial knee took 6 hours with every medication known to man. I was non-weight bearing for 6 weeks, and even now, for months later, I'm still in pain. On a side note, I found out my sister is an absolute gem in an emergency. Story 3. The first thing you lose will be your feet below the ankles. Then your hands at the wrists next your nose. The next thing you lose will be your left eye, followed by your right. Your ears you keep, and I'll tell you why. So that every shriek of every child at seeing your hideousness will be yours to cherish. Every baby that weeps at your approach. Every woman who cries out, "Dear God, what is that thing?" will echo in your perfect ears. That is what "to the pain" means. It means I leave you in anguish, wallowing in freakish misery, forever. Story 4. Bed bugs. It is not a straightforward physical pain, but it is physically, emotionally, and financially draining. I was hospitalized because of them. Story 5. Pancreatitis. If you have it, the hospital immediately administers the strongest medications possible for 1 to 2 weeks. I have experienced it twice. Story 6. Losing a sister is a profound loss. Seeing her lifeless body on the morgue table felt like my heart was tearing apart and my arms were breaking. I experienced both physical and mental anguish, with no remedy other than the passage of time. Meanwhile, everyone rushes to support the parents in their grief, as if siblings don't matter. The pain still lingers, but nothing will ever hurt as much as that phone call. Story 7. Severe gout flare-up. Unbelievable pain. Feels like the affected joint is on fire. I had one last summer in my knee that lasted 10 days. My knee looked like a cantaloupe. Luckily, I was able to get it drained, and it improved immediately. I no longer drink twisted tea. I only drink Happy Dad beverages now, and I haven't had a flare-up since. Story 8. Having your life wrecked by a moment of carelessness or a small mistake you are responsible for is devastating. Those who allow such situations to occur should not be permitted to create worlds again. Story 9. Physical discomfort from prostatitis is quite severe. Mental anguish came from witnessing my then-wife suffer a miscarriage while the doctors were unresponsive for 10 hours. Story 10. Calcific tendinitis of the shoulder occurs when your body creates deposits similar to kidney or gallbladder stones in your joints. Story 11. Being force-fed milk and honey, then tied to a boat and left to die from insect bites and indigestion was a horrifying experience. Medieval times were terrifying. Story 12. Waking up after major surgery without any painkillers in your system and having no nurses come to help you until your friend calls them and threatens to take legal action. Story 13. When my colon had deep and severe ulcerations that penetrated the inner lining and affected the outer lining, there were no nerves present on the inner lining. Story 14. The knowledge that you caused the death of someone you care about, despite how inadvertently it happened. Story 15. I broke my ribs after being hit by a delivery van while riding my bike. Took months before I could even cough or sneeze without feeling faint. 10 years later, if I laugh too hard, my entire torso cramps up, and I have to hug a post or curl into a fetal position to relieve it. That incident took away some of my joy. Additionally, I settled for $4,000, which was a big mistake. Story 16. When I was diagnosed in the hospital with ulcerative colitis, I was bleeding internally. None of the doctors who saw me knew what was wrong. I won't be going back to that hospital anytime soon. Story 17. Diverticulitis for me was much worse than having a baby. My first husband had kidney stones several times while we were together. Of course, he had no idea what was happening the first time, but it was quite painful. Story 18. Dementia. I do not care how much I dislike someone. I do not wish that upon them or their families. It is just the worst. Story 19. Splenic infarction. I can't imagine anything worse, and I have been through many challenges. Death would be kinder. Story 20. Abdominal muscle cramp. I experienced one after stretching in my chair, and it was absolutely horrible, with intense pain lasting at least 30 seconds. I could barely breathe. Story 21. A 9 mm kidney stone was stuck in the ureter, the tube connecting the kidney and bladder, causing the kidney to backfill and become pressurized. Kidneys are not designed to handle pressure. I didn't understand what was happening and thought I was genuinely dying. It was the first time I experienced pain rated a 10 out of 10. Interestingly, the same thing happened to my mother-in-law, who said it was much worse than childbirth. Story 22. Being lactose intolerant and trapped in an airtight room with an industrial-grade humidifier filled with milk. Story 23. Severely infected pilonidal cyst with intense pain. Injecting Novocaine before draining, it was the worst experience I've had. I know there are worse things, but I have heard it compared to the pain of childbirth. I wouldn't wish that pain on anyone. Story 24. Definitely diverticulitis. I spent 9 days in the hospital on pain medication, and I hope I never have to go back. The worst part is that the doctors cannot agree on what causes it, so I do not know how to avoid it. Story 25. I have reflex sympathetic dystrophy. My nerve attacks have caused Bell's palsy and a transient ischemic attack. A friend I grew up with has lost 2 of her children. I would rather endure the nerve attacks than go through what she has. I couldn't hate anyone enough to wish either of these on a person. Story 26. The last 5 minutes of unmedicated natural childbirth are challenging, but so worth it. I suppose kidney stones are also difficult to endure. Story 27. Dysmenorrhea. My first attack occurred on a random Saturday. I woke up feeling nauseous, but I thought it was just normal morning sickness because I stayed up late. I went to lie down in another room that didn't have air conditioning and started shivering. My cramps were blunt, sharp, and widespread: thighs, abdomen, and lower back. Worst of all, I was hit with severe nausea, causing me to vomit 3 times, experiencing dry heaves every 4 seconds. I had stomach issues and was silently crying, trying not to dry heave because my throat was hurting so much. I felt tired, but every time I drifted to sleep, I would vomit again and be overwhelmed by extreme nausea. Story 28. Honestly, the last couple of years have drained a bit of the humanity out of me. I wish my worst pain on all my enemies. An abscess tooth. I've lived with pain before: burst appendix, broken bones. Not this pain. This was a kind of pain that made me lay on the couch, screaming into a pillow for 5 minutes. A pain that consumes you. There's no thinking, just pain. When the pain does relent, it's only to a dull ache, merely pulling back its fist to hammer you over and over. With no nerve block, my dentist cut through one of my gold and titanium crowns to do a root canal, and it felt good. I wish that on my enemies. Story 29. The question was about physical pain, not mental or emotional pain. Therefore, sciatica and a severe ear infection can make you shiver and tear up as if you were burning. Story 30. I had appendicitis during my physics test in 11th grade on Halloween. That's when the vomiting, sickness, and searing pain began. I went to the emergency room and was informed that I needed emergency surgery that day. I am now without an appendix, which helped me avoid the test, but I missed Halloween. Story 31. I hope every time they pour a bowl of cereal, they realize they are out of milk. I hope that every day they wake up barefoot, surrounded by Legos. I hope that whenever they carry in groceries, the bags tear and all the food falls out, causing jars to roll everywhere. Story 32. Ruined reputation. People do not understand how much of your life is influenced by your reputation and how much of it is beyond your control. Story 33. I have had 3 back surgeries, as well as hip and knee replacements. The pain was significant. I visited the doctor for arthritis in my thumb at the joint. The doctor decided that a steroid injection would reduce the pain, especially since it was my dominant hand. I thought I was going to pass out, as the discomfort kept increasing. I received 4 injections, 2 on each side. Afterward, the nurse came in and would not let me leave. Apparently, I did not look well. Story 34. Laying the groundwork with someone of the opposite sex for a year or more involves spending time together, laughing, and enjoying each other's company, only to end up in the friend zone when attempting to confess feelings for that person. Story 35. Regarding the title, I could easily think of some politicians and billionaires I would wish everything mentioned hereupon. Story 36. Hemiplegic migraines feel like what I imagine being shot in the head would feel like and are accompanied by neurological symptoms. When I experience them, I usually lose feeling or have tingling in my extremities, experience vision loss, and slur my speech. I am often ill for days when these occur. Story 37. Catching an extra-large 18-volt battery between your knees as it slips off an 8-foot ladder is a painful experience. You learn quickly that very sensitive nerves exist in that area. The pain is instant and overwhelms your brain and spinal cord. You can't even think clearly. You want to move, but both legs are in total shock and feel unresponsive. The only comprehensible thought is to find somewhere nearby to sit. It feels more like an instinctual urge due to the chaos happening inside your body. You don't even understand your own existence. Story 38. Having to tell your young child that their other parent has passed away is incredibly painful. I have experienced many hardships, but nothing hurt like that. Story 39. Having an abscess in their armpit can be extremely painful. I had one long ago, and every movement caused excruciating throbbing pain. When they cut it open, it hurt intensely, but after a few seconds, it felt much better. I know someone who had one in a very sensitive area, and I can't even imagine how awful that must have felt. Story 40. Severe internal bleeding. Having your organs crushed from inside is not a pleasant experience. The morphine does nothing. Story 41. I do not have a limit on what I would wish for my worst enemy. As long as it does not impact another person, such as losing a child, I have never understood why people try to take the hypothetical high road. It is a very high standard of cruelty and being an unapologetic fool to become my worst enemy. Once someone reaches that standard, there is no limit to what I would wish for them. Story 42. A frozen shoulder. Take the worst foot cramp you have ever had, transplant that feeling to your shoulder, and multiply it by 100. Thank goodness for codeine. Story 43. Endometrial biopsy performed without pain medication. The procedure lasted approximately 20 to 30 seconds, but it was quite uncomfortable. Story 44. I don't want anyone to suffer. Even the most hated person I can think of, I just want them to disappear. If it's embarrassing and humiliating, like slipping on something unexpected in front of a crowd while they make a mistake, that's fine, but I don't really wish pain on anybody. Story 45. The answer is almost always cluster headaches. Story 46. There is no pain I would not wish on a true enemy, but for those I only slightly dislike, I would not wish a paper cut in the eye. It hurts so much. Story 47. To be aware of the damage caused to everyone they have wronged and to experience the emotional and physical toll of those moments in their dreams from the perspective of the recipient at least once every time they sleep, along with the inability to dull its effect with alcohol, drugs, or caffeine. Story 48. Migraine can vary in intensity and duration, but mine lasts between 12 to 24 hours, characterized by relentless and unbearable pain. There is little to be done aside from hospitalization and receiving medication I do not know the name of. Those who witnessed me during these episodes have likened it to a scene from a horror movie. During these episodes, I even experienced suicidal thoughts as a way to escape the pain. I have broken bones, and in comparison, that pain feels manageable. Story 49. Kidney stones. I am terrified of opioids, but I took one without hesitation when I had kidney stones. Story 50. Having your children wrongfully taken or threatened with being taken just because someone doesn't like you is unacceptable. Regardless of personal conflicts, children should never be involved. Story 51. I do not wish any pain on my enemy. I am only their enemy because they have experienced pain and cannot adapt to it. They have been through enough. I wish love for my enemy. Story 52. My wife once accidentally caused an injury. It wasn't so bad, but while cleaning it in the shower, I nearly passed out. Story 53. My top 3 most painful experiences, from least to worst, are unmedicated childbirth, kidney stone removal surgery, and hemorrhoid removal surgery. I couldn't sit, stand, walk, lie down, or use the restroom. Oh my cat, no. Story 54. Kept in a chamber that slowly removes the air, leaving you gasping for breath and clinging to life before it is abruptly taken away from you. Story 55. Having your son and his wife go no contact means you can no longer see your preschool grandsons. Story 56. Herniated discs impacting spinal nerves. There are days I cannot get out of bed due to the intense pain they cause. Story 57. I would not wish any pain on my enemies. I only have people who annoy me for one reason or another. Story 58. I overdosed on Adderall and tore every muscle in both forearms, 3 abdominal muscles, and both calves. During the overdose, everything else felt like it was tearing as well. Story 59. Childbirth can be a traumatic experience, especially for individuals who were raped. It becomes more challenging when the state decides that such circumstances do not warrant consideration, forcing a person to carry the pregnancy to term and raise the child without adequate support. This situation is further complicated by societal attitudes that often discourage assistance for single mothers. Story 60. Severed nerves and tendons in your hand, all of them. Ask me how I know. I have had a baby, been stabbed in the head, broken my arm, and been held against a gas fire. The glass window and the severed nerves were by far the worst. Story 61. I am currently suffering from degenerative disc disease and spinal stenosis while waiting for the doctor to decide the next best course of action. The only person I would wish this pain on is Donald Trump. Story 62. While I'm sure there are worse experiences, the worst I ever faced was a large burn on my torso and groin caused by spilling boiling water on myself. Story 63. When the doctor attempted to gently administer a pain injection into my foot nerve, he accidentally caused a sharp stab. Story 64. The pain of staying with someone at the expense of listening to your own intuition because you have convinced yourself that maybe this time they will change. Story 65. I didn't understand the question. Pain? There is no limit to the pain I would wish on my enemies, and that list is very short. Maybe 2 or 3. Story 66. Whatever has been going on in my mind since childhood. I have fractured more bones than I can remember, many at the same time. I have titanium rods in both legs and 16 plates in my face, one of which is currently exposed inside my mouth. No physical pain I have ever experienced compares to the mental pain. I did not realize how severe the mental pain was until last year when I went about 6 months without it. Completely changed my entire perspective on life. Story 67. Migraine. It is not just the physical pain. It is everything that can accompany it and the unpredictability of it all. I say this as someone who has given birth twice, broken a bone, and experienced sciatica. Story 68. Slipping a disc can often be painless, and many individuals may have a bulging or slipped disc without realizing it. However, if it occurs just right, it can limit your ability to walk. Coughing may feel like someone driving a battering ram through your lower back. Unfortunately, 9 times out of 10, the most any doctor will advise is to just wait and see and prescribe some pain relievers which may provide little relief. Story 69. Grief. Coming home and finding that my fiancé had passed unexpectedly was, and will continue to be, the worst pain I have ever felt. It was so emotionally overwhelming that it became physical, like I needed to throw up, lay down, scream, cry, and was hit by a truck at the same time. Story 70. The loss of a beloved parent or child is a void that cannot be filled, no matter how much you try. Story 71. Unfortunately, I do not wish the worst on my enemy. However, I would hate for someone I know to suffer the things mentioned in this thread. Story 72. I previously mentioned this but forgot to include some runners-up. The worst pain I have ever experienced was a twisted ovary due to a 9-pound ovarian tumor that twisted it. Other painful experiences that did not come close include gallstones, kidney stones, spinal injury, trigeminal neuralgia, shingles, diabetic neuropathy, bone spurs in both hips, pleurisy, tuberculosis, whooping cough, an infected bone in my face from a sinus infection, a broken and infected wisdom tooth. and a root canal that hemorrhaged every time the oral surgeon attempted to work on it, which prevented any treatment for an entire summer. Story 73. Aside from appendicitis, I would say bed bugs. Nothing will disrupt your mind and be detrimental to your mental health quite like dealing with those blood-sucking pests. Story 74. For my worst enemy, personally, nothing. However, my problem is with them specifically, not their family or friends. Story 75. Finding out that my lying, deceiving, betraying husband didn't have the courage to tell me he was gay before we got married is devastating. He didn't want to be gay, you see? What that has to do with being a deceitful person is something I still don't understand. My own pain was bad enough. I get it. I don't measure up. But my children's bewilderment and heartbreak at his desertion because he suddenly decided he wanted to be free and follow his heart, which for some reason meant leaving them behind, is a hurt that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. When this happens, friends often say they are really impressed that you found the courage to be true to yourself. They encourage you to go for it and be happy. I hope he faces the consequences of his actions. Story 76. As the son of the strongest man in the world, I watched him lift 900 pounds with ease, carry an entire elk on his shoulder, and install the transmission on a Ford Thunderbird with one hand while tightening bolts with the other. He could lift 4 cinder blocks with one hand and curl 180 pounds with one arm. None of that was hard. What was hard was watching him mentally and emotionally cope with life after his heart attack. He became a shadow of his former self, constantly trying to improve his condition. Then his kidneys failed. He couldn't walk or do anything. He fought valiantly for 3 years to regain his normalcy. So, for him to tell me that he was done, that he had given up, and that doctors said he only had 6 months to live was heartbreaking. Later, the doctors returned and reduced that timeline from weeks to days. He just wanted to be home, so I took him home. I stayed with him for 3 days as he watched TV and shared stories with family until one night he told me he loved me, laid down, and I watched the color drain from his face. The man I thought was invincible is gone. I really don't know how to handle life anymore without him. We were best friends in the end, and it was difficult to talk to him, knowing that could be our last conversation. However, he was strong even in death. He understood what was happening and accepted it. Still, it was the hardest thing to witness. Story 77. Of those I have experienced firsthand, I can confirm that a genuine migraine headache is incredibly painful. A bad headache does not necessarily mean it is a migraine. A true migraine has specific symptoms. Story 78. Months of pain and suffering my mother endured during chemotherapy and radiation treatments, minus the help of pain medication. Story 79. When you want to feel something, but you are not in the mindset to feel anything except the emptiness of the void, remember that physical pain can kill. However, mental pain can cause a slow decay. Story 80. I had a tooth whose nerves started necrosis. It was definitely serious pain, really serious pain. I had to endure that for 2 weeks, and it was the worst 2 weeks on the pain scale. When it started, it woke me up at 3 a.m., and my face was extra swollen on one side. Story 81. Shingles affects my face, primarily the trigeminal nerve. It is the worst pain I have ever experienced, surpassing gallbladder attacks. Story 82. If I don't like someone that much, I wouldn't mind anything happening to them. I wouldn't wish for it, and I have only ever hated one person, my abuser. I would be fine with him suffering anything, though it's a bit complicated because he is a family member. If he were to lose a child, that would matter to me. However, if he were to experience any physical pain, I wouldn't feel the slightest bit sorry. Story 83. Throbbing toothache while attending an elementary school dance recital outside in 95 degrees Fahrenheit sunlight. Praying for relief. Story 84. I saw a man get shot in the cheeks once. Half of his jaw was just hanging as he let out a distorted scream. I don't know if someone helped him out of mercy or if he passed away, but I saw him holding his own teeth and tongue. Story 85. Kidney stones. For the first time in my life, I passed out from pain. I used to box when I was younger and never got hurt that badly. Those little stones are truly painful. Story 86. IUD insertion was performed by a Navy medical professional using an outdated method and incorrectly. Additionally, the IUD began to create a hole in my uterus due to stress. I almost died and was initially denied medical attention because I was in basic training, and they did not believe the extent of my pain. Story 87. Kidney stones can cause extreme pain, especially when they are too large to pass. In such cases, a procedure may be required to break them up, which can involve inserting a stent while the area heals. The experience can be truly distressing. Story 88. A migraine is a serious condition. Many people use the term when they simply have a bad headache. A true migraine will have you curled up in a ball in a pitch-black room, wishing for relief until you feel extremely unwell. Story 89. Bone marrow biopsy without pain relief. I have had 8 done. 1 without any sedation, and it was excruciating. Even with sedation, it can still be somewhat uncomfortable on occasion. Story 90. To live with gender dysphoria is challenging. I wish people could understand, but I would never want them to actually experience it, regardless of how poorly they treat me. The pain of transphobia is minimal compared to the pain caused by ignoring gender dysphoria. It is not even close. Additionally, I am dealing with a kidney stone, which is quite difficult. Story 91. Suffering from mental illnesses. I wouldn't wish obsessive-compulsive disorder on my worst enemy. You are imprisoned and tortured by your own mind. You know it, but you can't fully break free all the same. Story 92. Withdrawing from thousands of dollars worth of drugs after losing your car, family, house, wife, and job, and then having to quit multiple drugs at once, including meth, opioids, and benzodiazepines, is incredibly painful. I would rather face extreme measures than experience that again. It was 1 month of pure agony with no one to support me. Story 93. Being caught in a situation at the young age of 4 that was out of my control. I have faced these demons that have haunted me since then. They have also affected my parents without my influence. I have learned to stand true to myself, and when the fire burns, I let it burn. Story 94. Sciatica pain was horrific. I went to the emergency room and was given 3 types of painkillers and muscle relaxants, but it did not alleviate the pain. I am now waiting for an MRI and to see a specialist. Story 95. Boils in the nose have happened to me a few times, and they were on the nerve, causing my jaw and teeth to hurt as well. Story 96. Severe sciatica feels like a white-hot electric shock, while severe endometriosis feels like someone rhythmically squeezing and twisting your insides. Both conditions can be worse than dislocating an ankle or breaking it in 3 places. Story 97. Shingles pain is intense. I've seen my mother experience it, and she is usually tough when it comes to physical pain. Seeing her brought to tears makes me think it must be really severe. Vaccinate your children. You will be saving them a world of hurt in the future. There are even vaccines for shingles now. Severe tooth pain is another issue. I've experienced mild tooth pain, and it was still a 5 or 6 for me. From what I've heard from others, severe tooth pain can be unbearable and maddening. Story 98. Tooth dying. I had a crown placed and afterwards thought I was going to die. It turns out it killed the root of my tooth. They had to do a root canal through the crown. Story 99. Swollen armpit lymph nodes. They are very swollen. I cannot put my arms down, straighten them, or exert force. This has lasted for days to weeks. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.